On a moonless night in May 1955, a convoy of 6 pickup trucks rumbled down Bonanza Road, kicking up dust into the dry Nevada air. Inside the trucks sat 20 men. They were not tourists looking for a slot machine. They were members of the local Ku Klux Klan chapter, and they had brought torches, cans of gasoline, and shotguns. Their destination was the Moulin Rouge, the first hotel in Las Vegas history to open its doors to black and white guests alike. To these men, the hotel was a sin, a stain on the desert that needed to be cleansed with fire. They expected to find a terrified staff. They expected to find unarmed doormen. They expected to burn the place to the ground before the police even bothered to answer the phone. But as the lead truck idled just 100 yards from the hotel entrance, the driver saw something that made him slam on the brakes. He did not see a police barricade. He did not see a protest line. He saw a single glint of metal from the roof of the casino. Then he saw another, and another. He squinted into the darkness and realized, with a sickening drop in his stomach, that the roof of the Moulin Rouge was lined with silhouettes. These were not security guards with flashlights. They were professional marksmen with high-powered rifles, and every single barrel was pointed directly at his windshield. The KKK had come to commit a hate crime. They did not realize they had walked into a kill zone set up by the Italian mafia. To understand why the mob was protecting a black hotel, you have to understand the only color that matters in Las Vegas: green. The mob bosses who funded the Moulin Rouge did not care about civil rights. They cared about the millions of dollars in the pockets of black tourists that were being turned away from the Strip. They saw an untapped market. And in the world of organized crime, if you threaten the market, you do not get a lawsuit. You get a bullet. The standoff that night lasted less than 5 minutes, but it changed the history of Las Vegas forever. Not a single shot was fired. No police report was filed. But the message was sent loud and clear. You can burn crosses in the front yards of suburbia, but you do not touch a mob investment. The Klan turned their trucks around and drove back into the darkness, terrified not by the law, but by the outlaws who stood guard on the roof. This is the untold story of the night the bad guys did the right thing for the wrong reasons. It's a story about how greed defeated racism, and how the most dangerous men in America became the accidental guardians of integration. But before we climb up to that roof and look through the scope, I want to know who is watching. We have a crew from all over the world tuning in for these stories. Where are you representing? Drop your city and country in the comments below. Are you watching from Vegas? New York? London? Let me know. And if you think it's ironic that the mafia did more for integration than the police, hit that like button. Now, let's go back to 1955, to the Mississippi of the West. To understand why a sniper on a roof was necessary, you have to understand what Las Vegas looked like in 1955. We see the old photos of Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin and think it was a golden age of cool. But for black Americans, Las Vegas was a nightmare dressed in neon. It was known as the Mississippi of the West. The segregation here was just as brutal as anything in Alabama, but it was more hypocritical. A black superstar like Sammy Davis Jr. or Nat King Cole could stand on the stage of the Sands Hotel and entertain 1,000 white people. They could generate millions in gambling revenue, but the second the show was over, security would escort them out through the kitchen, past the garbage, and into the alley. They were not allowed to sleep in the hotel. They were not allowed to gamble at the tables. They could not even touch the slot machines. This system was not just racist, it was bad business. By the mid-50s, there was a growing black middle class in America, with money to spend and nowhere to spend it. They wanted the Vegas experience, the champagne, the showgirls, the dice, but they were locked out. The Italian and Jewish mob bosses who ran the Strip, men like Mo Dalitz and Meyer Lansky, were sociopaths, but they were also brilliant capitalists. They looked at the segregation laws and saw a dam holding back a river of cash. They realized that if someone built a luxury hotel where everyone was welcome, where a black doctor from Los Angeles could sit next to a white lawyer from New York, they would make a fortune. So, they decided to break the law. Not the criminal law, but the social law. The project was named the Moulin Rouge. It was not going to be a small jazz club in a basement. It was going to be a palace. Located on Bonanza Road, just far enough from the Strip to be legal, but close enough to be dangerous, it was designed to rival the Flamingo. It had chandeliers, velvet drapes, and the best lineup of dancers in the city. The face of the operation was Joe Louis, the legendary boxer, brought in as a greeter to give the place legitimacy. But the money behind it? The money was a complex web of loans and silent partners that led directly back to the syndicate. The mob was betting big on integration. As the construction neared completion in early 1955, the temperature in the city began to rise. The white establishment was terrified. The local politicians feared that the Moulin Rouge would destroy the exclusive image of Las Vegas. But the real threat came from the shadows. The local chapter of the KKK, emboldened by the segregationist policies of the city, saw the hotel as an act of war. They started sending letters. They threw bricks through the windows of the construction site. They threatened to blow up the water mains. The message was simple. If you open those doors to Negroes, we will burn you down. The owners of the Moulin Rouge were in a bind. They went to the Las Vegas Police Department for protection. They asked for patrols. They asked for a guard detail for opening night. The police chief looked at them and shrugged. He told them he could not spare the men. He told them that if they wanted to build a colored joint, the security was their problem. It was a death sentence delivered with a smile. The police were going to let the Klan have their fun. This was the moment the mob stepped in. When the silent partners heard that the police had refused to protect their investment, they did not panic. They did not cancel the opening. They simply made a phone call to their enforcement arm. They did not view the KKK as a political movement. They viewed them as competitors trying to disrupt a business opening. And in the mob's world, you do not call the cops on competitors. You handle them. As the sun went down on the eve of the grand opening, trucks started arriving at the back of the hotel. They were not delivering food or liquor. They were delivering heavy cases that did not appear on any invoice. The Klan was preparing their torches and their gasoline, thinking they were about to attack a helpless group of entertainers. They had no idea that the Moulin Rouge was being fortified like a military bunker. The Mississippi of the West was about to witness a showdown between the old hatred of the South and the new violence of the West. And the men waiting on the roof were not planning on firing warning shots. On the roof of the Moulin Rouge, 4 men lay prone on the gravel, the heat of the day still radiating off the tar paper beneath them. They were not local security guards making $2 an hour. They were associates, flown in from Chicago and Kansas City, men who usually handled labor disputes with lead pipes or solved problems in cornfields. They held M1 Garand rifles and Thompson submachine guns, weapons that had seen action in World War II and in the gangland wars of the 1940s. They smoked quietly, flicking ashes over the edge of the parapet, watching the headlights of the approaching convoy cut through the desert dust. To them, this was not a political statement. It was overtime work. The bosses had said, "Nobody touches the building." And in their line of work, that order was absolute. Down on Bonanza Road, the KKK convoy slowed. The leader of the local chapter sat in the front passenger seat of a Ford pickup, a can of kerosene at his feet. He was feeling powerful. He imagined the headlines the next morning. Black casino burned to ash. He imagined the fear in the eyes of the doormen. He expected resistance. Sure, maybe a few punches thrown, but he had the numbers. 20 men, shotguns, fire. He believed he was the law in this part of town. The trucks pulled up to the curb, about 50 yards from the glittering new entrance of the Moulin Rouge. The neon sign buzzed overhead, casting a pink glow onto the street. The Klansmen poured out of the vehicles. They did not wear their full ceremonial robes, too conspicuous for a quick hit, but they wore the armbands and the hate. They started shouting, lighting torches, preparing to rush the entrance. It was a chaotic, angry mob, fueled by liquid courage and bigotry. Then Miker, a sound cut through the shouting. It was the distinct, metallic clack, clack of a bolt-action rifle being chambered. It echoed off the stucco walls of the hotel. The Klan leader froze. He looked up. Standing at the edge of the roof, outlined clearly against the night sky by the backlight of the casino sign, was a silhouette. The man was not hiding. He was standing tall, holding a rifle at the low ready. Then, another silhouette appeared on the left flank. Then another on the right. And then, the front doors of the hotel opened. But it was not Joe Louis or a waiter who stepped out. It was two large men in suits who walked calmly to the edge of the sidewalk, reached inside their jackets, and rested their hands on their hips, revealing the grips of pistols. The street went silent. The Klan leader looked from the men on the ground to the men on the roof. He did the math. This was not a fight. It was an ambush. He realized instantly that these were not police officers. Police officers would have yelled, "Freeze!" or "Drop your weapons!" These men did not say a word. They just stood there, waiting for an excuse. They were daring the Klan to make the first move. It was a level of disciplined violence that the local racists had never encountered. The Klan was used to intimidating families in wooden shacks. They were not used to staring down the barrel of organized crime. "Get back in the trucks," the Klan leader whispered. His voice trembled. "But we got the gas," one of his drunk subordinates yelled, stepping forward with a torch. "Let's burn it!" "I said, get back in the truck," the leader hissed, grabbing the man's shoulder. "Look at the roof, you idiot. That's not security. That's the outfit." The realization rippled through the mob like a cold wind. The outfit. The mob. In 1955, those words carried a weight heavier than the government. You could fight a court case. You could bribe a sheriff. But you could not fight the men who buried people in the desert. The bravado of the KKK evaporated instantly. They lowered their torches. They shuffled backward, eyes locked on the shadowy figures above. The snipers did not move. They did not flinch. They just held their aim, tracking the targets. The retreat was pathetic. The men who had arrived roaring like lions scrambled back into their trucks like frightened rats. Engines roared to life, tires spun in the dirt, and the convoy sped away, disappearing back into the safety of the dark. The sniper on the roof watched the taillights fade. He did not cheer. He did not high-five his partner. He simply engaged the safety on his rifle, lit another cigarette, and went back to scanning the perimeter. The message had been delivered. The next night, May 24, 1955, the Moulin Rouge opened its doors. It was a spectacle. Black and white stars partied together until dawn. Frank Sinatra sat with Pearl Bailey. It was the first integrated casino in Las Vegas history. And while the champagne flowed and the dice rolled, few people knew how close the whole thing had come to burning down. They did not see the men on the roof. They did not know that their civil rights victory was being guarded by murderers. The mob had drawn a line in the sand, not for justice, but for profit. And the KKK had learned a hard lesson. Hate is powerful, but in Las Vegas, the house always wins. For 6 glorious months in 1955, the Moulin Rouge was not just a hotel. It was the center of the universe. The mob's gamble had paid off beyond their wildest dreams. They had created the third show. In Las Vegas, the main shows on the segregated strip ended at midnight. The white tourists, still buzzing with adrenaline, had nowhere to go. But at the Moulin Rouge, the party was just starting. At 2:30 a.m., the doors swung open for the late-night review. And suddenly, the impossible happened. The white whales from the sands, the dunes, and the flamingo got in their taxis and drove to the black side of town. The scene inside was a social revolution. You had Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin sitting in booths next to Pearl Bailey and Harry Belafonte. You had white showgirls dancing with black musicians. In 1955 America, this was illegal in spirit, if not in letter. It was a nightly violation of the social order. The Moulin Rouge became the only place in the country where the color line did not just blur, it vanished under a haze of cigarette smoke and jazz. The mob had monetized integration. They proved that people did not care about race if the entertainment was good enough. The casino was printing money. The hotel was full. It was a utopia of vice. But in Las Vegas, success paints a target on your back. The owners of the white casinos on the Strip, many of them rival mob families or corporate interests, started to panic. They looked at their empty gaming floors at 3 a.m. and realized the Moulin Rouge was sucking the life out of their businesses. They also faced pressure from the local government. The sheriff and the city council were horrified by the mixing going on at Bonanza Road. They saw white women drinking with black men and called it a moral catastrophe. The police began to harass the patrons. They set up roadblocks. They checked IDs. They tried to strangle the business with red tape. The pressure was not just external, it was internal. The mob operates on consensus. The commission likely looked at the situation and realized that the Moulin Rouge was becoming too successful. It was drawing too much heat. It was angering the politicians they paid off to keep the rest of the Strip running smoothly. A decision had to be made. Was one hotel worth risking the entire Las Vegas operation? The protectors on the roof had stopped the KKK, but they could not stop the boardroom politics of the syndicate. Then, on a morning in October 1955, just 6 months after it opened, the unthinkable happened. The staff arrived for work to find heavy chains and padlocks on the front doors. There was no warning, no announcement. The Moulin Rouge, the hottest club in America, was closed. The official reason given was financial mismanagement. They claimed the liquor license was invalid, but nobody on the streets believed it. You do not close a gold mine because of paperwork. The rumors started immediately. The most prevalent theory was that the white casino owners on the Strip had pooled their money and paid the mob owners of the Moulin Rouge a massive kill fee to shut it down. They essentially bought out the competition to restore segregation. Another theory was that the police chief threatened to pull the gaming licenses of every mob casino if the interracial experiment did not end. Whatever the reason, the lights went out. The dancers were fired. The black tourists were once again locked out of the Vegas dream. The Moulin Rouge sat empty, a ghost ship in the desert, a monument to a brief moment of freedom that was deemed too dangerous to exist. The mob had proven they could protect a black business with snipers, but they also proved they would sacrifice it instantly if the price was right. It was the ultimate lesson in organized crime economics. Green is the only color that matters. But sometimes, to keep the green flowing, you have to respect the white. But the story did not end with the padlocks. The Moulin Rouge had planted a seed. The black entertainers, Sammy Davis Jr., Lena Horne, Harry Belafonte, had tasted equality. They had seen that integration worked, and they were not going to go back to the kitchen. 5 years later, they would use the memory of the Moulin Rouge as a weapon to force the desegregation of the entire Strip. The hotel was dead, but its ghost was about to haunt the city until the walls came tumbling down. The Moulin Rouge sat rotting in the desert sun for 5 years. The neon sign was broken. The pool was filled with sand. To the KKK and the racist city officials, it was a trophy, a reminder of a failed experiment. They thought they had won. But in 1960, the ghost of the Moulin Rouge came back to haunt them. The civil rights movement was sweeping the nation, and the NAACP in Las Vegas decided it was time to strike. They threatened a massive protest march down the Strip. They were going to block the casinos, stop the traffic, and kill the tourism industry. The mob bosses, the same men who had closed the Moulin Rouge to keep the peace, were terrified. A protest meant police, cameras, and lost revenue. They needed a solution fast. And in a twist of poetic justice, the meeting to settle the dispute was held in the only place in town where black and white leaders felt comfortable sitting together: the empty, dusty coffee shop of the closed Moulin Rouge Hotel. On March 26, 1960, the most powerful men in Las Vegas gathered among the cobwebs. The governor was there. The mob owners were there. The NAACP leaders were there. And looming over the proceedings was the spirit of the Rat Pack. Frank Sinatra acted as the unseen leverage, making it clear that if the Strip did not desegregate, the stars would walk. The negotiation was tense but short. The mob did the math again. The cost of segregation was now higher than the cost of integration. By the end of the day, the Moulin Rouge Agreement was signed. The segregation of the Las Vegas Strip was officially over. Sammy Davis Jr. could finally sleep in the room he paid for. Nat King Cole could walk through the front door. The barriers fell, not because of a change of heart, but because of a change in the ledger. The Moulin Rouge had died so that the rest of the city could live. The hotel itself met a tragic end. Over the decades, it caught fire multiple times, suspicious fires that many locals attribute to the lingering hatred of the Klan or insurance scams by the mob. Today, almost nothing remains of the original structure. It is a vacant lot, a scar on the landscape. But its legacy is indestructible. It proved that integration was possible, even in the most hostile environments. So, how do we judge the mob's role in this story? They were the bad guys. They were murderers and racketeers. But on that night in 1955, when the KKK convoy rolled down Bonanza Road, the mob were the only ones standing on the wall. They put snipers on the roof when the police turned their backs. They protected black culture when the government wanted to erase it. They did it for greed, yes. They did it for ego, absolutely. But in doing so, they provided a shield that allowed history to move forward. It forces us to accept a complicated truth. Progress in America has not always come from the ballot box or the pulpit. Sometimes it came from the barrel of a gun held by a man who did not care about the law, but cared deeply about the money. The snipers on the roof of the Moulin Rouge were not heroes, but for one night, they were the guardians of the American dream. The lights are out. The convoy is gone. But the gamble paid off. If this story of snipers, the mob, and the fight for civil rights blew your mind, smash that subscribe button. We are telling the stories that history books are too scared to print. I want to know your verdict in the comments. The mob protected the Moulin Rouge only for money? Does the motive matter if the result was stopping the KKK? Type greed or good below. Let me know your thoughts. And if you want more stories about the hidden wars of Las Vegas, hit the like button. See you in the next one. The end.